Welcome to The Last Word on Product Marketing, a podcast hosted by Liza Cichowski, founder of Last Word Marketing. Liza helps MarTech and AdTech companies align product strategy with marketing execution. On her podcast, Liza and her guests talk about how to avoid pitfalls and achieve success in product marketing.
Hello, and welcome to The Last Word on Product Marketing. I'm Liza Cichowski, a fractional product marketer and consultant with Last Word Marketing and your host of this podcast. I'm joined today by Matthew Moran, who is a product marketing director for the entire suite of advertising data and targeting projects at Eyeota, which is a division of Dun Bradstreet. Matthew is based in New York City, and I want to welcome you.
Hello, Liza. Hello, everybody.
So to kick things off, what are some of the challenges your company is facing right now when it comes to aligning product marketing goals with the corporate strategy, Matthew?
So I'd say that the biggest challenge is balancing some of the longer term initiatives of the overarching corporate strategy with the more immediate needs of the sales teams. For instance, the corporate strategy is often about market expansion, scaling up products, and innovation goals. But product marketing often has to prioritize shorter term goals like hitting quarterly revenue targets and supporting the sales enablement or reacting to a move by the competition. So there is often a tension between investing in longer term strategic initiatives like developing thought leadership content and more tactical requests from the sales or the product teams.
Interesting. So in your day-to-day, do you have an example that you could share of how that comes up?
So it's a constant balancing act, but basically there's two ways to address it. One is ruthless prioritization, and the other is communication. As an example, you need to have criteria in place to help you determine what to prioritize. That criteria might include immediate impact to revenue or closing a deal or alignment with a company objective or priority. So for instance, there's days that you need to focus on high-level messaging and positioning, but the sales team needs a quick turnaround on a collateral or a tailored pitch deck for a deal that they're working on. So you need to go through what your list of prioritization criteria is and determine which initiatives meet the criteria to be prioritized. So in tandem with ruthless prioritization is communication. Since we as product marketers are often balancing building long-term initiatives and putting out fires to support the immediate needs of the sales efforts, we often find ourselves in a position where our goals don't perfectly align, and it's important to communicate that to all the stakeholders and have an ongoing negotiation, so to speak, to keep everyone moving in the same direction.
I can relate to that. Sales teams are very demanding, and sometimes they are the ones that set the priorities because they're the ones that are keeping the lights on. They're the ones that are out there.
They're bringing in the bucks. Yeah.
Right. So we have to balance that. But we can't also run around with
with a hair on fire, always putting out fires. Yeah.
We have to move forward.
Exactly.
But along those lines, what's worked, what hasn't worked in your career at Eyeota or any place else that you've worked in order to do that ruthless prioritization that you were talking about?
So oftentimes it's really just about the communication. When you are prioritizing, you need to communicate to the sales teams the reasoning behind what you're doing. So you can't just be like, I can't do that for you. I've got too much to do. You have to explain, we have a corporate goal that we have to hit, and I'm working towards that. There's some messaging that I'm building out. I can't really put this deck together for you right now. We can work out a timeline when we can get it done, but I can't immediately handle this for you right now. So it's really about keeping the communication lines open all the time.
Yeah, it's about relationships too, right? Having that relationship with the salespeople so that you can work more closely together and be on the same team, right?
Yes.
Okay, shifting a little bit to how have market changes like changing customer expectations or new competitors entering the fray affected your ability to differentiate with messaging and across other touch points in the market?
This is a really interesting question. Ad tech is an incredibly dynamic industry, and there's always an influx of new players with innovative offerings that kind of basically raise the bar for the entire industry. Competitors are increasingly matching baseline features like analytics, customer insights, and AI-driven capabilities. So we can't rely solely on technology or product innovation to stand out. Customer expectations have also evolved. So they want things like real-time insights. They want things like seamless integrations into their tech stacks. And this is pushing us to focus more on the customer experience. So things like ease of use and quick integrations. One of the biggest shifts we've seen is in privacy and data protection. Regulatory changes have brought awareness and more scrutiny into how companies handle data, leading us to positioning products as privacy first, highlighting compliance and transparent data usage as key advantages. And to continually successfully differentiate, we have to go deeper into understanding what our customers' pain points are. Basically, to focus on specialized use cases, vertical specific solutions, we need to tailor messaging around industry specific challenges, whether it be in fintech or financial services, healthcare, pharma, et cetera.
Yeah, it can be really difficult to differentiate, I think, when the marketplace is also so crowded. It takes a lot of consensus building.
Yes, consensus building is essential.
Yeah. But ultimately, the marketing team has to support the sales team, right? So how do you know that you're working effectively with sales? What are some challenges you faced with working with sales, making sure that they have what they need, that they're going to use your materials out in the market?
I think the most important aspect of any product marketer's relationship with the sales teams is consistent and clear communication and alignment on goals. Sales should actually be involved early on in the process, from messaging development and positioning. By keeping consistent communication and collaborating with the sales teams, you're able to create more effective marketing materials that directly address the needs and objections that they're going to be encountering in the market. It's important to have something like weekly syncs or bi-weekly joint meetings with the sales teams just to keep aligned on priorities and timelines. But I also think that sales should have an input into what you are producing. So collateral-wise, outside of the messaging and positioning, you should be producing whatever the sales teams feels will close deals, whether that be pitch decks or battle cards or case studies. Work with them to produce the materials that work best for them. A big challenge I found in creating enablement materials is the level of detail to include. So it's always a balancing act between, clear, concise, and easy to digest content that also provides the level of technical detail that really highlights the product and what it's capable of. Another challenge I often encounter is tailoring content for where the customer is in the sales cycle or funnel. Early stage conversations typically need higher level benefits driven content, but a customer that's further along in the process requires more technical content, and it's really, frankly, always a balancing act. Another challenge in creating compelling sales enablement materials is producing materials that cater to specific verticals or customer segments. So this can be pretty time consuming and difficult to scale. So, each vertical kind of has their own unique needs and pain points. And it's great to have personalized content like that, but it's also very resource heavy and a time suck to create.
Yeah, definitely.
And I guess, and I think finally, kind of as an enablement material challenge, as you mentioned earlier, the adoption and usage of materials is often a hurdle. So even well-crafted material won't be used by the sales teams if it's not in a format they prefer. So going back to my earlier point, it's important to involve them early on and to collaborate with materials that they will be able to access and actually use.
Yeah, I think that you touched on a few things that are really essential, which is the understanding the persona in order to understand exactly what messaging is going to resonate. I know I do a lot of persona research. And the other thing that you mentioned that I related to a lot is the right sales deck or right piece of material with the right level of detail as it relates to the sales cycle. I have clients that always want to put more words on the slide. Right?
Yes.
They want to make sure that they're putting every piece of information that the prospect will need in order to make this decision. So that's always a point of negotiation about
Yes.
how much detail to include. I'm a big fan of when it's at the beginning of the sales cycle, less words, and then a little more words as you get, more detailed into the actual technology.
Exactly. Or even have like a product overview deck that can be sent
Yeah.
separately that they can delve into at their own pace and time with all the information that's highly detailed.
Right. Like a library, I think I call it. Pick and choose which slides are appropriate for which meeting. Yeah. So similarly, it can be hard to align marketing and sales, and then you add product, the product marketing part. The product team needs to be involved too with their goals and priorities. I think you mentioned a little bit of how you communicate with the salespeople and have them involved in the process early on. Where do you bring in the product team in that discussion, or how do you keep communication and collaboration open with that team as well?
So I see product marketing as a bridge between the commercial org and the product org. And I think it's important to be involved in some of the day-to-day of both of those teams and facilitate a feedback loop between them. For instance, I like to be in the room or at least go on some sales calls just so I can hear things directly from the customer's mouth. I also like to sit in on stand-ups and scrum meetings on the product side from time to time just to get a really good understanding of how the product works and how it will evolve. And I think that having this sales and product knowledge is really important to build that bridge between those two teams.
I think so too. I love working with both sales and product, but I find I always learn something new for every time I meet with product.
I think in a lot of ways you want to embed yourself in those teams and kind of be a team member in a way. That also helps with the earlier we were talking about engendering trust with those teams.
Definitely. And then when you sit down to actually write the materials or the messaging, I always find that there's a little bit of tension to balance the sales narrative with the technical features. So how have you tackled that in terms of showcasing the product capabilities while also making an emotional connection with the customers?
I personally do not think that leading with technical features is effective. I think it's more effective to deliver a narrative about the challenges that your customers are facing and how your product is going to solve them. Human beings are just innately drawn into a narrative, and telling the story pulls customers in and makes a connection, and they get invested. Narratives that show how the product is impacted actual users, whether it's improving efficiency or increasing revenue or helping someone even achieve a personal goal. These stories kind of humanize their technology and make it relatable. So after you deliver that narrative, that's what you should start off with from the start, at the very beginning. Then you can get more into the details of the capabilities of the product. And, oftentimes showing is better than telling in this regard. So while technical features can be impressive, they're just as frequently complex, hard to visualize, and very hard to explain effectively. In these cases, I use visual storytelling. This can be things like demos, animated GIFs, short explainer videos that make the product and features capabilities tangible and easier to understand. And it also reduces the amount of thinking that a customer actually has to do to think through how things work. It taps into their emotions and creates kind of an aha moment where they can see how the product makes their life easier.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. I love to lead with story first or narrative. And then as you get them more interested, you can make an emotional connection. Then you can start showing them some of the technical features. I often say that nobody really buys technology.
Right, exactly.
They're really buying a feeling. And that feeling is you got this. You have them covered. You have what they need. You understand them, etc. So how do you persuade the sales team to actually use the beautiful materials that you've created for them? You already touched upon this, or when you said that you open communication and bring them into the sales process early. But ultimately, when you finish everything and you say, okay, here it is, here's the reveal, of everything I've created for you. How do you get them to trust that these materials will aid them to actually close deals?
So there are a few ways to ensure that the sales teams use materials you created for them and engender trust. I do think consistent and clear communication and alignment on goals through regular cadence of sync-ups, and also involving the sales teams in the collateral creation process early on are very important. They're kind of the most important. But some additional methods that can be used and go a long way toward building trust with your sales teams is one, demonstrating value. So actually point them to case studies that have led to successful client engagements and actually close deals. You also want to acknowledge and celebrate their wins with them. So when they use your materials to successfully close a deal or pave the way to a renewal, you want to celebrate that. And you also always want to listen to them and be willing to action on any improvements and be willing to revise materials based on real world feedback from them.
I think that's great. I love the idea of celebrating the wins with them, particularly you're a technology product marketer. It's very fast paced and it's very go, go, go. And you check it off the list and you're on to the next. We often don't take enough time to celebrate our contribution to the win. So I think that's great that you prioritize that. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to learn a little more about Matthew.
You've spent over 20 years in corporate, and now you've stepped off the hamster wheel to run your own show as a fractional executive. Whether you're flying solo, leading a small firm, or running a boutique, Maven is your fast track to earning over $500,000 annually, and potentially more, without the grueling corporate hours. This is your shot at the freedom, flexibility, and independence you've worked so hard to achieve. By infusing your intellectual property into all aspects of your revenue generation, Maven transcends the limitations of other sales and marketing approaches. You'll have a pipeline so full that prospects who truly value what you bring to the table will be the ones knocking on your door. You'll work directly with Jay and Taz, who've led the way for over 30 years, helping countless executives make this leap. Contact J.Kingley at fractionalmaven.com. Spots are limited, so act now to build the business and life you deserve.
Welcome back. We're talking to Matthew Moran, who is Product Marketing Director for the entire suite of advertising data and targeting products at Eyeota, a division of Dun Bradstreet. Matthew, let's find out a little more about you. So in your career, what's a pivotal moment that shaped the way that you approached leadership and decision-making in your career now?
So I would say a pivotal moment in my career came when I was part of the launch of a product designed to help people communicate more easily. A feature that we believed would empower users to kind of have meaningful relationships. However, one of the core features allowed for unfettered messaging. And after launch, we quickly discovered it made it too easy for some users to harass others. And this oversight led to a lot of negative feedback, a lot of pulling back what we released in the market. It highlighted how a tool intended to facilitate positive connections could be misused to cause harm. And that experience taught me the importance of fully testing all potential use cases, both the positive and the negative. So it wasn't really enough to focus solely on how we envisioned users would engage with the product. We needed to anticipate how it could be exploited. We had performed robust functional testing, but this event really underscored the need to kind of bring in ethical and safety considerations to be part of product development from the start. So as a result, I now approach leadership and decision-making with a broader and more inclusive mindset, taking that into consideration. I emphasize to the teams that we need cross-functional collaboration with legal and security and user experience teams, ensuring that all their perspectives are considered when a product is being developed. And secondly, I always want to advocate for a comprehensive user case testing framework. So, it goes beyond the functionality to assess potential misuse and unintended consequences.
That's hard, though, I think. It's almost like predicting the future.
Yes, it is difficult. Trust and safety is something that we definitely need to consider in any product that we're releasing. It can't be skipped.
Yeah, absolutely. When you're not working, what are you up to? Do you pursue any passions that might surprise your coworkers?
So, plants. I'm a bit of a plant freak. I mean, you can see
Yeah.
the plants behind me here. I have a rubber tree that's 25 years old. There's a fig tree. I've got a Norfolk pine, some African violets. But this is actually just a small fraction of the plants that I have outside of what you can see here. I mean, I have avocado tree outside here. I'm growing grapes, flowers, and vegetables of all kinds. So I'm a little bit of an amateur botanist farmer.
That's pretty cool that you could do that in Brooklyn, in New York.
Yeah, I've got a lot of light in here, so that helps because that's the main thing for plants.
Like
is
I'd
the light.
expect that from someone in California, maybe,
Yeah.
but it's interesting that you have it right here in New York. So finally, is there a piece of advice or a lesson that you learned early on that still influences your approach?
Yeah. So, my career in ad tech actually started a very long time ago at Martha Stewart Living, where I was building microsites in HTML for advertisers on marthastewart.com. And I learned a lot working under Martha Stewart, believe it or not. She embraces creativity and innovation. So Martha has continuously expanded her brand by embracing creativity, whether she's developing new recipes or creating home decor lines. She innovates while keeping her core audience in mind. So relating that to product marketing, I've learned to always think creatively about how to position and evolve products. And it's not just about following trends, but about finding new and innovative ways to solve problems while staying true to the product or the brand's DNA.
I think Martha Stewart is an amazing marketer. Yes, a product innovator and all of those things, but she is, I think, an incredible marketer.
Exactly. I learned a lot from being there. And it still
bet.
affects me in my decision making today.
And you've met her, correct?
Yeah, I worked with her, yes, for 6 years.
That's amazing. Okay, as we wrap things up, what is the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Sure. So the best place to get in touch with me is LinkedIn. You can find my profile under the username M Moran New York City. And I'm also available over email, which is my Gmail, iammatthew@gmail.com. And anybody tuning in, I'm happy to talk, discuss anything around product marketing with you. So reach out.
Great. Matthew, I want to thank you for being a guest on the Last Word on Product Marketing podcast. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast on all the major platforms and our YouTube channel for videos. And remember, when sales and marketing are aligned, customer growth is unstoppable. Thank you for listening.